3.
Am I going to sit there and argue with you over we had steak 2 days ago, I want chicken?
B.
I'm going to be spicy all of the time. I don't care if I'm single or not.
C.
I think that the foundation is how you were brought up.
3 Black Chicks on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
Hey everybody, thank you for tuning in to 3BC. That's 3 Black Chicks, and I have 3 phenomenal black chicks in the studio with me today. Miss Leah Douglas Wooten of Progressive Realty, Sherica Hymes of Polish Consulting, and Beverly Robertson of Trust Marketing. And we are talking about women in business. There are different types of businesses. There are different types of women. You can either be a woman that's in when I say in business, for this particular topic, I'm thinking management, upper level. You can work for somebody else. You can be self-employed, entrepreneurship. But there's this I don't know if I guess I could call it a movement, but we've all heard of Me Too, where women started speaking out about being sexually harassed. And it's always been interesting to me because sexual harassment it's very serious, first of all. I don't make light of it at all. But when it comes to the workplace, so often it becomes sexual harassment when it's unwelcomed. Mm-hmm. And when it's someone that you're interested in, someone you find attractive, maybe you don't qualify that as sexual harassment. Mm-hmm. But those unwanted consistent advances, because if somebody tries to talk to you once, that's not sexual harassment. But when they don't take no for an answer or try to utilize their power, their leadership over you in order to get what they want, then we have a problem. Ladies, share with me, have you ever been sexually harassed and how did you handle it? Sherica.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'll go first. So, so to say Me Too is a movement, I think we use the term movement because that's what they're calling it with hashtag Me Too. But the reality is that it's always been happening, unfortunately, True. In the workplace. And it's a very serious matter. The HR practitioner in me would not rest well without saying that. Have I been a victim of sexual harassment? I have been a victim of sexual harassment personally, which I thought was very unusual. And I'll just share the scenario with you. I was early in my HR career, and oddly enough, one of the employees tried to talk to me, but I said no. I graciously declined his request, but he kept doing it over and over again. And when I would go out to that particular location, he would continue to make those advances and then position himself in spaces where we would be the last 2 people in a room, where he would have close proximity to me. And I found it very uncomfortable. And I will tell you, because I'm a black woman and he was a black man in leadership, the professional in me knew exactly what the next step was. The black woman in me really had to think about, when I make this claim, he is going to now not have a job because of the egregious nature of his advances. And I thought about that. Mm-hmm. And which is interesting to me that I had to think about that. I was in my late 20s when that happened, but I had in my teenage years been a victim of a violent sexual assault. Mm-hmm. And so I thought of the dichotomy between those two things. Like, why am I struggling? The professional in me knows he's violated this, knows the right thing to do. I actually do investigate claims, so I know how this all works. But it was something about all of that I thought was very unusual, even talking about it now in my over 40-year-old self.
I don't think it wrong that you did not want to set in place actions that could be the downfall of a black man.
Why do you not think it was wrong when he was
No. What I'm saying is the fact that you took the time to think about it. I don't think that was wrong. Okay, yeah. No. You have the right to protect yourself.
Yeah, no,
always.
I thought about it. I think I thought about it too much, though, to be honest with you. The fact that you take on that responsibility, which is genuinely what happens with women anyway, is you start to now make it your responsibility, regardless of your color, about, am I doing the right thing? Did something really happen to me? And all of that. that. So it's a very complicated matter and subject. But what I will say to all women and men too, because sexual harassment is not gender specific.
Both ways.
It works both ways. I will say definitely if you ask someone out or if you make advances towards someone and they tell you or they are not reciprocated and they are unwelcome, you should stop immediately, because that is what constitutes sexual harassment, is when you continue those unwanted advances. And I should also note, the HR practitioner in me will not let me not, I should also note that it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be the person that the advances are made towards. If you are actually approaching someone, if someone is approaching you and you're okay with it, but Miss Beverly is a bystander and she's offended by it, it's sexual harassment for her. And most people don't know that.
I didn't know
because
that.
you are creating now an uncomfortable work environment for them. And that always gets people. So it's why true training on sexual harassment is very important.
But let me ask you, how did that situation end?
gonna
Did you
ask the
end
same
up
thing.
making a claim?
I did make a claim. I did file a claim. And after the investigation, and again, because of the egregious nature of his persistent advances, he was terminated. He was terminated.
I had to go. Now that she's triggered, I had to go back 35 years.
Interesting
to remember.
terminology, triggered.
It triggered it when you said it, because I've been in business for myself, so I don't come in contact with any sexual harassment at my office. But when I was in corporate and I was in my 20s, I can remember, I was in my early 20s, and I can remember a supervisor, which was a black male, flying into, I was in marketing, and he flew in and they told me, hey, it's your job to take this gentleman around, which I did. And at the end of the night, he was like, well, I need you to take me, drop me back off at my hotel. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is part of my job. And I pulled up in front of the hotel and he said, well, I need you to come in. And I'm thinking, no. And I'm thinking like you, Sherica, now is this my job? Is this his job? But now I'm 22. I told him, okay, I need to make a phone call. I will come up, but I need to make a phone call. My 22-year-old self called my mother. And I said, Mama, it's a supervisor that wants me to go upstairs. She said, get in your car and go home.
Thank God for mothers.
She said, get in your car and go home. And so the next day at work, I reported it immediately, and he was terminated. He was terminated, and all he did, it was just one time.
Abuse of power.
It was one time. I was so afraid. I was in tears. But I called my mama, and my mama called.
I'm sorry that happened to you.
I'm sorry that I had forgotten completely about it till you said
I'm
that.
sorry.
But
that
even
happened
as
to
a
you.
business owner, and you are an attractive woman, and you provide a service, you come in contact with men all the time. Have you had people try to do business with you, or even come at you under the guise of business
Every
and
day.
make advances towards
Every
you?
day I have men that do, and all I can tell you is I'm either tickled or flattered, depending on if I'm interested or not. They're generally between 29 and 35, and I'm not ashamed. I'm 57. I'm always flattered that they are.
Beautiful.
But there's no harassment because I'm in charge.
Yeah, I've actually experienced, I know, I can tell you, some of the meetings that I've gotten because I'm attractive. I'm a woman.
Right.
But I make it very clear I'm here for the business, and it's going to be business, and that's all we're dealing is business.
Right.
We're not crossing the line.
We're not crossing the line.
There will be no line crossing.
Exactly.
Right. We're here for the money. You always tell them we're here for the money.
Right, and no compromising of my own personal ethics and standards. So I am willing to walk away from a deal. Right.
Yeah, you can always
walk
steer
away
the
from a deal.
conversation
Right.
back. But I know sometimes we laugh at those advances, and people think it's okay because we smiled or they laughed, and they keep going with it, and then it becomes uncomfortable.
Right. But at that point, then, when you get a little older, you're real blunt and direct. Okay, this is not fun anymore. I know I laughed at first. We're not going to do this anymore.
I don't know if it's always because you're older. I've had a number of women, not just in my corporate experience, but in my consulting business, who talk to me about or even in the community, they are older and they're not really sure how to have that conversation. What I do think is interesting is women who are from my mother's generation, because of the respect that they have for men and the fact that they were always taught that they were really sort of second I don't know if that's the right way I want to phrase that, but
kind of subordinate.
Subordinate, right. And in ways is that they really struggle with the language to diffuse those situations and need some coaching on how to do that. So I don't think it's age specific.
Right.
Even today, though, I think that can be a struggle too. I mean, I remember when I was teaching, because I taught school for 3 years. When I got out of college, there was a principal at the school. And, I was sure enough fine, stumped down. Yeah.
He was a brick house.
I've seen pictures. That tiny little waist.
Brick house.
Legs. But I remember he called me into his office, and he spent all the time advancing toward me. And we ended up, I ended up running around his desk and out the door. And I think I communicated that to one other person, but I knew that I had to go back into that school environment again. So, one, I avoided all contact with him separately. Number one, I would never be in a situation again because I thought he was going to talk about my evaluation. But he ended up saying very little about that and saying other things. But I avoided all contact individually with him. I made it a point to express very clearly that this is not something I am interested in. You are a married man, and frankly, I know your wife. And that might have sounded more like a threat to him, because indeed I did know his wife. And so after I did that, he never did another thing to advance because he had no idea what kind of person I was and whether or not I would communicate directly with his wife. So he stopped, period. And I never was bothered with that situation again. But I think we need to be real clear about what our positions are in those situations. And because it was a school and not so much a corporation, the process, we didn't even know what the process was. In fact, back in those days, I mean, nobody communicated that to us. But I probably wouldn't have taken it any further. I probably would have if he had continued. But because he stopped and knew that it was unwanted, I was okay with it. And I finished that year out, so it wasn't a problem. But I do think sometimes I feel conflicted a little bit about Me Too in a way because in some instances I think some of God's other children, women, advance toward men. And when our men reciprocate and maybe they collaboratively decide something, then they turn around and call it sexual harassment. And so I think that there is some of that going on too. So I was listening to a national speaker. I don't know if you know Julianne Malveaux, Dr. Julianne Malveaux. But Dr. Malveaux was very clear that there are a number of situations where sometimes it's mutual, but because it's not continued, then it becomes sexual harassment.
Dr. Malveaux has a valid point. I will be honest, I've seen throughout the years before this movement before social media, quite frankly, I have seen people be in relationships, and the moment that the relationship is ended,
they don't want it to.
And things go to the left, even if they ended it, I've seen the woman, I can only speak from my experience, I've seen the woman end the relationship in the moment the male in the workplace starts dating some other woman in the workplace, and now she upset, and now she's running to the HR office filing a claim, and now we have this investigation, which is why you will find, I will tell people, insulate and protect yourself. If you are in a corporate environment, that could mean education, any workplace environment, report the relationship so you both can sign a statement that the relationship is mutual.
wow.
Okay, wow.
It's the best
wanna
way.
get
It's
HR
the
involved
best
in
way.
that?
And if you own a business,
I didn't know that.
If you own a business, you should implement a policy that people who are in a relationship should self-disclose, so they both can sign statements saying that they are in a mutual relationship.
Wow.
And then when the relationship ends, someone in that relationship should tell you the relationship is over. It's the best way I can tell you to insulate
that.
yourself. This is the way you protect yourself if you're in a relationship.
Relationships 2018.
Exactly. This is why
But
you
I
need
think
to have.
that's important,
It
though.
is right, and this is why you should have real HR. And I will tell folks who are particularly in nonprofit environments, you should have a real HR consultant come in to help you set up and frame up your stuff. If you are in a small business environment, you should have an HR person worth their salt come in and give you these type of tips so you can insulate yourself. And then I will tell you also, and this is going to sound controversial, as a woman who has already self-admittedly been a victim of a violent sexual assault and been a victim in my corporate career, as someone who was a victim of sexual harassment, is I will say this. There are people on both sides of the table who are using this as a barter tool.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And because people like attention and things get sensationalized, all of these people have not been harassed. All of these people have not been assaulted.
No, very true. And the thing that always gives me a red flag is when it was so long ago. It was 10,
Yeah,
15
20 years ago. Right.
20 years ago. And not to say that it didn't happen, but my question becomes, why are you saying something now? Maybe you felt empowered. Maybe you were afraid back then, and or this person has been doing it all along, and you want to help people who they have recently victimized. There are lots of different reasons, and I'll tell you the reason I probably feel the way I do. I have a former client who I was in his office one day, and we had worked together for a while. I mean, this was totally out of character. He hit me on my behind. And then later on, and before I left, he hit me on my behind again. I was speechless. I did not know what to say, what to do. And like I said, this was so out of character for him. But the next time it was. Never, ever.
Maybe it was out of character for him with you, because
I'm saying towards me. I don't know anybody else, but towards me. But the next time we spoke, he brought it up. He said, "Did I make you feel uncomfortable?" I said, "Yes, you did." He said, "I'm sorry, and I'll never do it again." And like I said, and he didn't. I mean, we don't work together, and that had nothing to do with why we stopped working together. But he never, ever, ever crossed that line again. So when all of Me Too came about and people were sharing their instances, and just like right now, I shared what happened, I said I would never disclose who this was. Well, number one, we squashed it. Why am I going to bring it back up? Number two, why do I want to be responsible for the downfall of this individual?
But why does his improper behavior become your responsibility about what happens to him?
Well, my thing is, we ended it. I don't see a reason to put it out there and make sensational headlines with it, because it had been handled.
It had been handled. Well, I will have to challenge about women who are coming out years and years from now. Obviously, none of us know every woman's story or the reason why they are coming out, or men, because I don't want to make this one-sided.
True.
But I will say this. I think when you say, when people in general say that they have issue with someone who comes out 20 years from now, I don't know what things had to take place in your life for you to now have a voice. I don't know what you're now no longer under, where you can speak freely, because sometimes these are tangled webs, and there are reasons why people don't say that. To our conversation earlier about women who now just don't even have the voice in their late stages in life to articulate. How do you respond when you are being approached with unwelcome advances? I think we have to be very careful about that, because we don't want to victimize the victim or make them now responsible for someone else's improper decisions. But also, what do you say to the person who's now 25 who talks about the uncle that molested them from 8 to 15? I think when you say now he's not molesting them anymore, that may just be geography, because he now no longer has access to them. But what do you say to that? So I think when you start saying that those become very muddled waters.
I think I look at your intentions, and not to say that it didn't happen, your feelings aren't valid, none of that. I truly believe if that is what you felt, if that is what happened, you're entitled to it, own it. But some of these people are being vindictive. or they want to be a part of the movement. They want the intent. They want the attention, and that's where my question mark comes in.
It tells
Because
where you
I look
are.
at people like Bill Cosby. Do I believe some of that happened? Yes. Do I believe all of that happened? Because what was the total number that came out?
I don't know, something, 50 something.
I don't believe all of that happened. No.
That wasn't Me Too. That was character assassination. That wasn't Me Too. I don't even remember the guy or his face. I don't remember anything about him, so it wasn't worth mentioning. I didn't even remember till you brought it up, Sherica, that it happened. They didn't remember either. Somebody triggered it for them.
What, Bill Cosby?
Yeah.
Well, I kind of take a little bit of a different position on that.
Yeah.
Here's my position on that. Where there's smoke, there's fire.
I agree.
And there were too many people early on who came out and said things about him. Now, it was a piling on. I will grant you that.
Yes,
it was
absolutely.
a piling
I
on.
agree
It was
with that.
publicity, a piling on, people wanting to join, be joiners of it. But I do believe that Bill is guilty of violating
I do
some
too.
number. I strongly believe that, because everybody is not going, in 55 women, everybody's not going to lie.
Oh,
And
I
that's
believe
right.
he did it.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
saying the reason, wasn't the first one 30 years ago?
I don't remember.
I'm not quite
There
sure
were different
of the
years.
time.
It was different years.
But
Okay,
I will
Let's
say
agree.
that this was strategically done.
That's-
Yeah, this
Oh,
is
absolutely.
this
Now, I
is
do
not
believe
new
the timing is
behavior.
strategic.
People,
Yeah.
there were people who have always known.
Right.
Yeah.
Someone decided he was what's the word, dangerous at that point for whatever reason and needed to be stopped. And this is the way that
I
we're
agree with
going
that.
to do
Right.
it.
I agree
Right,
with that.
right.
Because they could have come out before now.
Oh yeah,
And
but they sat on that information.
They did. And I don't understand why they did. And this man is, what, 80
85
years
and that's
old.
what I mean when I
That's
said
crazy.
somebody triggered it for
Yeah.
them.
Oh, yeah. The memory, you mean,
Yeah,
of that.
somebody triggered the memory for them. Somebody said, "Hey, didn't Bill do? Didn't you tell me
something
Bill
to
did?"
Yeah, it's an interesting subject, and it is a bit complicated.
It is.
It's a
It's
bit
very
complicated.
it's not all black and white. There's
No.
definitely some gray areas.
A lot of
and
them.
also and I never believed that I'm trying to choose my words carefully. I don't want to victimize anyone, but
right.
sometimes we have to stop and ask ourselves, what did I do to encourage certain behaviors?
Ooh,
And maybe you
that's
didn't
touchy.
do
Wait a
anything.
minute.
No, maybe you didn't do anything.
That's victimizing the victim.
No, when I say that,
Okay.
it's like, did you entertain certain conversations? And what were you flirting with this person, and they thought it was okay to keep progressing? And like you said, it's very touchy, and it's a
very touchy.
case by case basis.
It is a
It
case by
is
case
touchy.
scenario.
And you can ask the question. I've had, since I've been in business, a gentleman to hit me on my behind. And immediately I turned around and said, "What did I do to give you the thought that was okay?"
Why is that the question? Why is that the leading question? What did I do? What did I do? If someone, it's very interesting to me when we think about that, and I think that that's societal conditioning. I'll be honest with you, for women, is so if someone punches you in your mouth, are you going to say, "What did I do to make you want to punch me in my mouth?"
No, we're going to have something else going on.
Exactly. When someone hits you in a car accident, do you say, "What did I do to make you hit me with the car accident?" It's very simple, at least from my perspective, is there is nothing that you can do to make someone think it's okay for them to fondle you or to inappropriately handle you. There is nothing you can do, and I think that's a part of the problem, is we lead with that is, what did I do to make you think that was okay? You didn't do anything but show up for your review, what you thought was your performance evaluation. You didn't do anything but show up for your business meeting. You didn't do anything but show up for your business meeting. And so all I did was show up for work to do my job. So the leading question should not be for any of us, what did I do to make you think that was okay?
But you know what? It's interesting that you would say that, because you are looking at it also through a personal lens.
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
And I don't have that same lens, but I can understand that. But when you have a personal experience. And I'm not sure we discuss this issue enough.
No,
Nor do we discuss the language and how we perceive things versus how we maybe should turn the situation around and view it differently. And I think when you have a personal experience, it becomes crystal clear. Right. Anyway, no. It becomes crystal clear.
You can also be jaded, though, too.
About, but it's still your lens, though, through which you're viewing it. And I think that adds a lot more gravitas to the importance of the situation and the importance of the response. Because I think a lot of women would ask that question because maybe they've not really thought about it the way you think about it. But I think it's important that we educate each other.
Absolutely.
On how to sometimes view that situation, And, I made a decision not to do anything about it further because this individual stopped. Well, maybe I should have gone to the city school system, the HR department, and filed a complaint. Maybe that would have been the logical thing to do. But I wasn't necessarily thinking about him. I was just thinking, look, you're not going to do it again? Good. You don't do it again? I'm good. Right. And you made a mistake. I told you made a mistake.
Which is a perfect scenario, right?
And when I asked the question from the level that I was on. When I asked the question, I was saying, what did I do to make you think that was okay? Because now I'm going to fire your ass.
What did he say, though? What was his response?
He was a subordinate.
He was a subordinate.
Oh,
he was a subordinate.
Wait a minute. How did he have the nerve to...
What did I do to make... What was wrong with
him?
Was I that fan that day? I'm just... Have you been drinking? That was the question.
What was his response?
I apologize, Miss Wooten. I don't know what came over me. I'm sorry. I won't ever let it happen again.
And you the boss?
And I'm the boss.
He wasn't thinking at all.
He wasn't thinking at all.
He got poor judgment.
Poor judgment on his part.
Poor judgment
on it. But I'm saying, that's what I'm saying. Is it something that I did because you done went crazy?
And you young too?
Yeah.
It's just out of control. I do want to clarify something. Is when you hear me talk about this, not only do you hear me talk about it to Miss Beverly's point earlier about my personal lens with my personal experience, but you're also getting the professional in me because I want to make sure that anyone feels comfortable going forward and they're not stopping themselves at the what did I do? And did I do something wrong? And all that. Yes, you should be self-checking. I do agree with that. We all should be self-checking. But that's what you're hearing when you get it from me. You're getting the personal and the professional perspective because I always want to make sure that I'm being authentic to my professional self and what I know is right in most environments. So women and people in general basically have that information in that guide that they can go by. Yeah.
3 Black Chicks, thank you for tuning in as we talk about women in business.
3BC, hosted by Jae Henderson, recorded at KUDZUKIAN Studios, directed, produced, recorded, and distributed by KUDZUKIAN.
Hey everybody, this is Jae Henderson, the host of the all-new 3BC. If you would like to join in on today's discussion, go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/3BC and tell us what you think.
Fed.
I'm your host, Cynthia Daniels.
And I'm your co-host, Williams Brack.
So we're going to be interviewing business owners about their journey. What made them leave their 9 to 5 and just go out and create their own brand?
Grind fed.
KUDZUKIAN.